Hi students, welcome to lesson number 34 on Dalit movements. The Dalit in Sanskrit means to split, broken, oppressed and so on. Dalits are economically, socially, politically exploited and humiliated since centuries. The word Dalit was first coined by 𝗳𝗧𝗪𝗺 𝗺𝗪, who was also the founder of 𝗧𝗦𝗺𝗪𝗺 𝗧𝗺, which was a non-violent movement in Maharashtra. Later, Dr. 𝗵𝗺 𝗵𝗵𝗃 in the year 1891 to 1956, the founding father of the Indian Constitution and the most significant leader of the Dalit community, popularized the term. In the 1930s, Indian leader Mahatma Mohandas Gandhi called the Dalits Harijans or the children of God. Dalits were called with names such as Dasa, Dasyu, Rakshasas, Asura, Avarna, Nisada, Panchama, Chandala, Chura, Bhangi, Mahar, Mala, Paraya and Pulayam in different regions and languages. The deep dislike which is integral in these terms is clearly reflected by its literal meaning, that is, Dasa means slave, Dasyu means brigand, Rakshasa and Asura means demon, and Avarna refers to someone who is external to the Varna system or is an outcast and is the opposite of Savarna, which refers to those who are included. The Dalits were treated as untouchable because of the kind of occupation such as manual scavenging, removing of carcasses, etc. they are involved with and due to which they were forced to live outside the village. The age-old caste hierarchical tradition in the Hindu society has given scope for such kind of exploitation, and it is the cause for oppression of Dalits in every sphere of society since centuries. Further, it has subjected them to a life of poverty and humiliation. The Dalits were the ex-untouchables who have been brutally exploited by the so-called upper caste are placed outside the Varna Vyavastha and were referred to as outcasts in pre-independent India. Dalits were not allowed to live a life with dignity and equality despite India achieving its independence. It is this idea of dignity and equality sparked the beginning of Dalit movement in India. Dalit movement is a struggle and the movement of the masses who are striving for justice. It can be reflected in their speeches, literary works, dramas, songs, cultural organizations. So, it can be called as a movement which has been led by Dalits to seek equality with all other castes of the Hindu society. The origin of Dalit movements, the factors responsible for the emergence of Dalit movements. Now, the origin of Dalit movement. The Dalit movements have their seeds in the struggle of the indigenous communities against the Aryan invasion and domination. In an analysis of power as power to dominate and power to resist, the living culture of the Dalits signify a long history of defiance, protest, struggles, persistence and perseverance that prevented their total subjugation, integration or destruction. We come across anti-caste, anti-Brahmanic, anti-untouchability and anti-hierarchy philosophies and movements from very ancient times. They came primarily from the lower caste and the outcast. Thus, the materialistic philosophy of the Charvakas, the anti-patriarchal worshippers of the female principle, the Tantrics, the Sankhyas and the Saktiyas, Buddhism and the Bhakti movements are the forerunners of organized thought and popular movements against the values, norms and standards set by the Brahmanic system. Tracing Dalit movements as anti-Brahmanic, anti-caste, anti-patriarchal, one can safely trace their philosophy and inspiration from these early movements. Now, we will understand the various causes of Dalit movements. The Dalit movement is a result of the persistent hatred being generated from centuries in their heart from the inhuman activities of the upper caste of India. Dalits have been subjugated to numerous deprivation in India since time immemorial and have been marginalized in different spheres of life. They have been socially degraded, economically exploited, politically subordinated and educationally deprived by the dominant caste and classes. The upper Varnas looked down upon the Shudras. It was general belief that Dalits are part of the lowest of lower Varnas. Dalits have been positioned at the bottom of the rigid Indian caste society. People from higher caste believe that Dalits are impure by birth and that their touch or their presence could be polluting. Hence, they are assumed to be untouchable. For centuries, Dalits were excluded from the mainstream society and were only allowed to pursue menial occupations like cleaning, drying latrines, sweeping, tanning or working as landless labourers, labour for mere daily wages. They were the people who cultivated the land and worked as bonded labour. Untouchability, the most inhuman practice, made the Dalits to live in extreme inhuman situations. Dalits were forced to live barbaric life, starving for food in their own land where they themselves are the owner of the land. Enraged the Dalits. This made the Dalits to rise and protest against the inhuman practices of upper Varnas. They were discriminated in every sense. They were not allowed to enter into the mainland areas, prohibited to wear decent dress and ornaments, system of Devadasi was imposed on them, education was monopolized. The Dalits were never placed in their rightful position, which they deserve. Today, they constitute the marginalized section of society. They were denied access to resources, either material or intellectual. There is a long history of relative deprivation, discrimination and exploitation. Dalit masses began to show signs of resistance against the structures of domination that was imposed upon them by the caste stigma of this land. They began to assert their identity, seeking self-esteem and self-image of the community as well as demanding equal opportunities in the social hierarchy. Thus, Dalits decided to stop the unequal practices in society where one group benefits from the other, which led to the emergence of Dalit protest movements in different parts of the country. Now, we will understand what are the various factors which are responsible for the emergence of Dalit movements. There are various factors which are responsible for the emergence of Dalit movements, and one such is the reform movement. A reform movement is a type of social movement which aims to make gradual change or change in certain aspect of society rather than rapid or fundamental changes. The first one is the Hindi reform movement. Many Hindu reformers were not happy with the caste-ridden Hindu society and made efforts to reform it. Raja Ram Mohan Roy was one among the reformers who established the Brahmo Samaj in 1828 in Calcutta. And the main objective of the Brahmo Samaj was to eradicate social evils like casteism, child marriage, sati and idol worship and other beliefs. The Tattva-Bodhini Sabha was founded by Debendranath Tagore in 1838. Its principles were similar to those of the Brahmo Samaj. It merged with the Brahmo Samaj in 1859. Hindu Literary Society was established in 1830 in Madras by Veera Swamaiah and Srinivas Pillai, whose objective was to uplift the untouchables. Dadoba Pandurang established Manava Dharma Sabha in 1844 in Surat. Radhakant Dev founded the British Indian Association in 1851 at Calcutta and who strove for the upliftment of the Dalits. 𝗧𝗦𝗔𝗧 Vidyasagar set up 20 schools in Bengal in the 1850s. He was against the repetition of old Shastras and untouchability. Gopal Hari Deshmukh wrote many articles in Prabhakar, a Marathi weekly, to bring about social awareness among the people. Apart from the Hindi reformers, various missionaries, Islamic revivalists like Kuka movement, Parsi reform movement and uprisings such as that of Kolis of Gujarat, Ramosis in Bombay and Pagalpanthis of Bengal also played a major role in the rise of Dalit movements in India. It is a socio-religious reform movement that is also called as Dalit reform movement. A number of reform movements were launched by socio-religious leaders such as Ramdev Panth, Satnami Panth, Kabir Panth, Neval Dharma, Varkasi Panth, Narsaya sect and Matwa sect. The main objective of these socio-religious reform movements is to preach that God is one and formless, to believe in equality of all human beings, to maintain good and moral conduct and lead an ideal family life. The founders and propagators of these movements have played a significant role in bringing about a new awareness, separate identity, self-pride and self-confidence among the Dalits. They attempted to introduce radical changes in the Hindu social system. They became successful to a great extent in elimination of the caste-based discrimination and propagation of the motto of equality among the people. They were reactions to the orthodox Hinduism. The leaders of various sects played a significant role in generating a new vigor, a separate identity, self-pride and self-confidence among the Dalit masses. Second major is the Dalit education. Education provides individuals the means to increase their income and to engage in economic activities. It helps empower individuals to promote social change through political activism. The lack of incentives to pursue education for the Dalits of India can be traced back to a long history of mistreatment and oppression. Dalits were denied access to education. They themselves started to spread education among themselves to improve their own situation. In this regard, 𝗳𝗏𝗪, who was victimized by the upper caste Hindus for being a Mali, he said, "For want of education, intellectual deteriorated. For want of intellectual morality, decayed. For want of morality, progress stopped. For want of progress, wealth vanished. For want of wealth, the Shudras perished." All the sorrows sprang from illiteracy. He decided to spread education to the poor masses. He established 18 schools in and around Pune. To spread education, his wife 𝗧𝗦𝗔𝗧 𝗚𝗏 helped him to fulfill his dreams. 𝗳𝗏𝗪 later founded 𝗧𝗦𝗔𝗧 Samaj in 1873 at Pune for the social and religious upliftment of the Dalits and other backward classes. His objectives of social reformation, eradication of untouchability and restoration of the rule of toilers had a far-reaching influence on the social and political life of the people of Maharashtra. Third major factor is the conversions. To get rid of untouchability and caste system, some of the Dalits converted to Islam or Christianity or Sikhism to get a new social status in the society. Besides new social status, conversions also assure material benefits. To escape from the evil practices of caste system, most of the Dalits of United Andhra Pradesh adopted Christianity. The Dalits of Maharashtra converted to Buddhism, where the conversion was not an attempt for individual salvation, but a quest for collective emancipation. Many Bhangis belonging to Lalbhegi and Malkhana caste converted to Islam, but they were disappointed as conversion did not discard the age-old Hindu impact on their minds. They adopted Islamic names and rituals, but at the same time they followed their old Hindu rituals and ceremonies. This practice was not liked by the Muslims and never treated Dalits as Muslims. Other factor is the military services. The Dalits worked under the Muslim and Maratha kings. However, their military career rose to prominence under the British rule. In 1768, the East India Company had 2 battalions mainly consisting of Mahars of Maharashtra. It had a special inclination for Mahar soldiers as they had military background, were faithful and brave and had no inhibitions in serving on the sea or crossing the waves to get to foreign lands. The Maharashtrians fought bravely against the Peshwa on the arid battlefield of Koregaon in 1818 and achieved the victory. They later fought in the First War of Indian Independence in 1857. The Chura untouchables of Punjab fought for Maharaja Ranjit Singh and later for Gulab Singh of Kashmir. Military service was a boon for Dalits as they were barred from all walks of life by caste Hindus. It improved their socio-economic condition and they learned the manners, values and discipline of the British military. Personnel, they gained education from the East India Company and were aware of the outside world through military expeditions of the British. They had fair chance to share their thoughts, ideas with the people of other countries, which further resulted in a broader outlook. Because of education and awareness, they began to think about improving their lives through mass movements to fight against the evil practices of caste system. The other factor is the role of missionaries. The Portuguese missionary St. Francis Xavier attempted large-scale conversions of lower caste in the coastal areas of Western India. Later on, the Church of England became active in conversion among the lower caste. The untouchables, who were victims of aggravated forms of untouchability, especially in Travancore, which is now the Thiruvananthapuram, became Christian converts. Retention of caste status. Caste status was retained even in new faith due to the caste consciousness of high caste converts. The Bishop of Calcutta, Daniel Wilson, issued a circular in 1823 to all the Anglican missionaries in India, saying that the distinction of caste must be abandoned. In 1848, Spencer, the Bishop of Madras, and 84 missionaries decided to abandon caste as it was opposed to Christianity. Further, the Madras Missionary Conference held in 1850 resolved to abandon caste hierarchy in Christianity. It was found that one hand that caste status was retained by the high caste converts, and the other hand serious attempts of the missionaries to abandon the same were going on. The missionaries' attempt to have an educative value which brought an awakening in the Indian society in general and among the Christians and lower caste in particular. The process of conversion increasingly exerted threatening pressure on the high caste Hindus to accommodate certain new values and to make adjustments according to the new challenging situations. More and more members of SC community, both from the elite and cross sections of society, prefer to identify themselves in the public spheres as scheduled caste. Now we will understand the minor movements which are responsible for Dalit movements. And the first one is industrialization. Industries developed in the country with the help of the British. They heavily promoted indigo industry as it was a primary export to Britain. Other industries such as jute industry, steel industry, coal industry, leather industry and Assam Tea Company prospered from 1833 to 1850. Industrial progress has led to the social change as people of different castes and communities got employment in the respective individual establishments. Second minor factor is the new land system or land reforms. In India, most of the land belonged to the upper caste who never cultivated the land. Land was cultivated by the middle intermediate class who were further supported by the landless labourers at the bottom. Most of the Dalits were landless labourers who never owned any land. The British introduced the permanent zamindari settlement in Bengal, Bihar, Orissa and northern Madras, and the temporary zamindari settlement in the United Provinces, the Central Provinces and the Rayatwari system in Bombay, Madras, Berar, Sindh and Assam. The new land system, however, had a major impact on the socio-economic conditions of the people of India. Land became the subject matter of state interests. Its protection was the responsibility of the state. Due to loss of village autocracy and state intervention in the land system, villages were linked with the state through administrative machinery and means of communication. Another minor factor is the educational reforms. Educational reforms during British rule during 19th century were not destined for development of India per se, but Indians have been utilized it at the fullest for their advantage. The state took up the responsibility of educating the people. The new education was deliberately made available to all the people irrespective of their caste, sex or religion. It was uniform throughout India. The aim was to educate people in India the new knowledge and new values so that they could create a new awareness among the people. Another minor factor is a new legal system. During British rule, the new legal system came into existence. Earlier, the law was based on the religious texts, but later on it was passed on by the Legislative Council. The Governor General in Council was given the power to draft laws for the country. Significant laws such as Regulation 17, in 1829 that made sati illegal in Bengal Presidency, the Bengal Regulation 11 of 1775 and Regulation 3 of 1804 that made murder punishable. The Caste Disabilities Removal Act of 1850 were introduced to promote changes in India. Another minor factor is the communication and transport facilities. Before the British rule, Indian transport system was backward in comparison to the Western countries. There were no roads and no railways to connect distant places. No telegraph system existed. The East India Company felt the need of good transport and communication system both for political and economic purposes. Railways were established under the Governor General leadership of Lord Dalhousie. In 1855, the East India Company completed 21 miles railway line from Calcutta to Raniganj, and the Great Indian Peninsular Railway Company comprising 37 miles railway line from Bombay to Kalyan, and in 1856 Madras to Arcot. Other communication means including telegraph and telephone were also invented in the later half of the 19th century that helped in the exchange of ideas and information. Another minor factor is the print media or the press. There is a very close relationship between the modern India struggle for social and political emancipation and the origins, growth, development of the print media in India. The history of the press clearly asserts that from the beginning, nationalists fought against attack by the colonial state on the freedom of expression as well as freedom of press, which was the integral part of India's struggle for national freedom. Though there were consistent attacks by the both British East India rule and the British Empire on the freedom of the press through vigorous laws or brutal suppressive measures, however, the press in general defied it, fought against it and played an adversarial role to support, propagate and promote cause for national independence. The first newspaper in the country, the Bengal Gazette, was launched in 1780. Another newspaper including Samachar Darpan, etc. were published subsequently. The press and books influenced the thinking of the people of that period and led to mass movements in which people from all sections participated. Now, we will understand the backward classes and Dalit movements. Before independence, Dalit movements were broadly clubbed with backward class movements, but they gained a distinct identity of their own post-independence. The first one was the Naya movement. This movement was started under the leadership of C.V. Raman Pillai, K. Ramakrishna Pillai and M. Padmanabha Pillai in 1861. It was against Brahminic dominance. The Malayali memorial was found by Ramana Pillai in 1891. And Naya Services Society was set up by Padmanabha Pillai in 1914. It was set up to fight against the unjust state meted by the Dalits in Kerala. The second major movement is the 𝗧𝗦𝗔𝗧 movement. Jyotirao Phule founded the 𝗧𝗦𝗔𝗧 movement in 1873 in Maharashtra. It was for the emancipation of low caste, untouchables and widows. This movement fought against Brahminic dominion. He advocated technical education for the lower classes. He also wanted education to be imparted to the children in rural areas. He always agitated for better living conditions for the workers in the mills in Bombay as well as for the farmers, a majority of whom were untouchables. He propagated his socio-economic ideology through press. He always led a selfless life devoted to the upliftment of Dalits among the Hindu society. Thus, it is clear that Phule was really a great reformer who lived and died for the welfare and upliftment of the Dalits. Other major movement is the Justice Party movement. Justice Party movement was started under the leadership of Dr. T. M. Nair, P. Tyagaraja Chetty and C. N. Mudaliar in 1916. It was against Brahminic domination in government services, education and politics. Later, the South Indian Liberation Federation SILF was found in 1916. Its efforts yielded in the passing of 1930 government orders providing reservation to the marginal groups. Another major movement is the self-respect movement. It was started under the leadership of E. V. Ramaswamy Naikar or Periyar in 1925. It was designed to improve the living conditions of the Dravidian people. It fought against caste system and biased approach of Brahmins. 𝗂𝗽𝗱𝗁 journal was started by Periyar in 1910. The principal objective of this was to remove all superstitious beliefs based in religion. Another important movement is the 𝗧𝗦𝗧 Dharma Paripalana Yoga movement, SNDP movement, which was started by 𝗧𝗦𝗧 Guru, who belonged to the backward 𝗧𝗦 caste, started this non-Brahmin movement, SNDP in Kerala. He launched a 2-point program for the upliftment of 𝗧avas to root out the practice of untouchability. He was against Chaturvahana and considered it as a parent of the caste system and untouchability. He gave a new slogan, one religion, one caste and one God for mankind. Another major movement was depressed class movement, that is the Mahar movement. It was started under the leadership of Dalit leaders like Valankar, Siyaram Kamble and others in Maharashtra with the help of B.R. Ambedkar in 1924. It fought for the upliftment of depressed classes and against untouchability. The Mahar movement brought the smaller and untouchable castes into a degree of awareness and unity. It created a separate political party, a system of education which included hostels, schools and colleges. It was also an effective Buddhist conversion movement. Depressed classes institution was founded in 1924. Marathi fortnightly Bahishkrit Bharat was started in 1927 along with establishment of Samaj Samata Sangh in 1927. Ambedkar founded the All India Scheduled Caste Federation, a political body for the Dalits in 1942 that propagated their views on depressed classes. Now, we will understand the contributions of Mahatma Gandhi and Dr. B.R. Ambedkar towards Dalit movements. Mahatma Gandhi's contribution. Gandhi called Harijans as people of God and used newspapers including Harijan and Young India to propagate his anti-untouchability views. In his writings, he stressed the problems of untouchability and its removal from its roots. He felt that Hinduism did not permit untouchability and even felt that untouchability would not be removed by the force of even law. It could only be removed when the majority of Hindus felt that it was a crime against God and man and were ashamed of it. The aid of law had to be invoked when it came in the way of reform, that is, opening of a temple. He found Harijan Sevak Sangh in 1932. G.D. Birla was its president and Thakkar Baba its secretary. He always preached among the Harijans the importance of cleanliness, abstention from carrion eating and intoxicating drinks and drugs, requirement of taking education themselves and giving it to their children. Gandhiji therefore was concerned with the issues of Dalits, no less than any other leader. His heart went out to them and he worked very hard and sincerely for their upliftment. In spite of other struggles for freedom, he devoted considerable time and energy to bring an end to untouchability. Now, the contributions of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. B.R. Ambedkar was an intellectual, thinker and great social activist. His whole life was shaped by his experience, which was humiliating because of rigid caste system and practice of untouchability. He emphasized the protection of civil rights of all people, including the Dalits. In 1927, along with 10,000 Dalits at Mahal, led a protest to let untouchables to draw water from the public well. This protest caused great concern to many Orthodox Hindus. In 1929, he began a temple entry campaign. Many temples were closed rather than allowed in Dalits. Ambedkar became the undisputed leader of Dalits, and the Dalits realized that they need to come together to face the common problems. In 1947, he became law minister in the Congress government. He was the drafting committee chairman, which was given the responsibility to draft the constitution for the country. He resigned from the cabinet with the complaint that the government was not doing enough for Dalits. He spent rest of his life for laying foundation for the future of the Dalits. He strove for the redistribution of surplus land and waste land to untouchables. He founded Ambedkar's People's Education Society, under which he established many colleges and schools. He did the groundwork for the setting up of Republican Party of India, and he along with half a mill embraced Buddhism and propagated the message among untouchables to embrace Buddhism, as it does not have caste system in it. Now, we will try to understand the post-Ambedkar Dalit movements in India. Important development took place in Dalit movements after the death of Ambedkar. The Dalit movements took multiple forms. Social, cultural, economic and political post-independence period in India has seen assertion of the Dalits in India in many forms and phases. And the first one is the phase of Republican Party of India and Mahar movement. The Republican Party of India was founded by 𝗳𝗏 𝗏𝗃 in 1957, and it focused their efforts on acceptance of the genuine demands of the scheduled castes. Its leaders such as B.K. Gaikwad, B.C. Kamble, Dige, G.K. Mane, Harihar Rao Sonule, Datta Kati, etc. were elected to the parliament in 1957, where they raised issues related to Dalits. Republican Party of India was able to make Dalits conscious about their rights and to voice against atrocities committed to them. This party amelioration of the socio-economic condition of the Dalits and the poorer classes had to enable them to capture political power. The RPI became popular in Uttar Pradesh and Maharashtra in the 1950s and the 1960s. Mahar movement was another strand and was already there before independence, and it was also rose in Maharashtra. Mahars were untouchable caste in Maharashtra. It was anti-Brahminical in its ideology, and instead of reforming caste, it advocated rejection of caste system. It termed caste system as anti-democratic and anti-human. Many followers of Ambedkar finally opted for Buddhism over Hinduism, showing their disregard for caste system. The second important movement is the phase of Dalit Panther movement. Inspired by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar and influenced by Marxism, Ambedkarism and Negro literature, a group of Dalit intellectuals founded Dalit Panther in Maharashtra in 1972. It was a revolutionary anti-caste organization founded by Namdev Dhasal and J.V. Pawar, and initially also followed rustic violence means. The name of Dalit Panthers was borrowed from the Black Panther movement of the blacks in USA. It was basically a movement of Dalit intellectuals which contributed to generating consciousness among Dalits to a significant extent. It attacked the Hindu caste system through literary activities, debates and discussion at homes, offices and public places. The movement was significant in the history of Dalit movement because it emerged to fill the vacuum created in the Dalit politics of Maharashtra, and the Republican Party of India split into many factions. The Dalit Panther also led to some sort of renaissance in Marathi literature and art as they spread their ideas through a lot of literary activities. Another most important post-Ambedkar movement or party was the Bahujan Samaj Party. Bahujan Samaj Party is a national level political party, was founded by Kanshiram in 1984 and had its base in Uttar Pradesh and substantial presence in neighboring states like Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Uttarakhand, Delhi and Punjab. BSP was truly the first major political party which freed the Dalit mobilization from the mainstream politics. Earlier, the cause of Dalit was only a subjandum of the major national political parties. BSP gave a vocal voice to the voice of the millions of the Dalits in the national stage. But BSP has two major problems. One, lack of clear ideology, and second, it is a leader-centric party. 𝗂𝗏 has noted that the BSP ideology can best be described as vague. She clearly argued that the party did not have clear ideology in the program and functioning of the party. The sole thrust was on the breaking of the caste system after acquiring state power. The BSP believed that the Indian society consists of two different groups, the The first group consists of the lower castes, including the scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, other backward castes and the religious minorities. In the second category, it is the Brahmins, the Kayas, the Baniyas and Rajputs of the traditional upper caste. Next important movement is the post-reservation Sanskritization movement. Sanskritization largely ceased to exist among Dalits as a policies of positive discrimination, reservation and equal status instilled a new confidence in them. Further, political mobilization and revival of Dalit consciousness also played a role in downplaying the Sanskritization factor. Next important one is a new socio-religious movements. A wave of new socio-religious movement began to take shape in 1970s as an alternative social movement started to gain currency. These movements had a wider secular appeal and were open to non-Dalits and members of other communities as well. Thus, they were not pure Dalit movements per se, but like many cults and sects, they attracted the depressed section in a big way. Alternative sect and cult movements like Radha-Swami Satsang movement and 𝗳𝗧 𝗧 were found and they continue to find major support among Dalits even today. Dalit movements have been amorphous in shape, but some elements are common. Satnami movement of Chamars of MP, Adi Dharma movement in Punjab, the Mahar movement in Maharashtra and anti-Brahmin movement of South India all had such common elements like a quest for humane treatment. To sum up, the strategies, ideologies, approaches of Dalits movement vary from leader to leader, place to place and time to time. The Dalit consciousness came to the fore in different forms and shades. The efforts made by Dalit leaders for the liberation of the downtrodden masses could be termed as Dalit movement. It was a movement of protest against untouchability, casteism and superstition. It aims at the uplift of the Dalits to the level of non-Dalits. On one hand, it stands for rejection of the old traditional Hindu social order based on untouchability, socio-economic inequality, casteism, unscientific and irrational religious beliefs and customary servitude. On the other hand, it stands for acceptance of a new social order based on equality, liberty and social justice, scientific and rational religious or moral principles and social, economic, cultural and political development of the Dalits. Thus, it is a movement to gain self-respect and equal human status in the society, which is a result of the consciousness of Dalits of their own identity as human beings, equally equipped with physical and mental capacities as other human beings and equally entitled to enjoy all the human rights without any limitations.